Oh, great. Wow, thank you so very, very much, Dallas and Darren, for granting this interview. Really.
Thank you.
We're talking about Southeast Asia, the moral fabric of the traditions of the society, and particularly we're going to talk about Cambodia, with the understanding that the things that we will see and understand about Cambodia affect the others. They affect Thailand, they affect Laos, they affect Vietnam, even all the way to the Philippines. There's a very similar sort of approach culturally to the big subject, sex. So, I read about Children at Risk from New Life Foundation sponsorship program. New Life is a church in Cambodia, one of, I think, the biggest church. And they said many village children grow up in extremely poor conditions because their struggling families live day to day not knowing where their food will come from. Many at-risk children do not attend school because to survive they must labor in the rice fields with their families. So I want to talk about the village children. I'm going to ask Dallas. How does it work with the children? Why are the families so poor and don't have food? If they're growing food and they have rice fields and they're farmers, what's really going on with their food supply and why are they so poor that the children can't go to school?
Because all the food that could be sell and do something like give to the father drinking and stuff like that could be the problem with that as well.
Is there a big problem with drinking and alcoholism?
Yes.
With the men more than the women, you would say?
Yeah.
Do you know why this is?
Don't know.
So when you were growing up, you grew up in the village, didn't you?
Yes.
Would you say half of the men in the village drank too much, or maybe less than half? Or
I think 60% or more than half, they're drinking a lot.
Drinking too much?
Yeah.
Wow. So we don't really know why. Now this is dealing with the moral structure of society. If all these men, more than half, drink so much, how are they also able to be husbands and fathers? Who do they drink after they get married or before? I mean, are people actually marrying their daughters off to drunkards?
No, normally I can say before they get married they don't drink as much. After they get married, maybe the family getting poor and stuff like that, they stress out, they could drinking more than normal. So that could be another the thing. It could be the lazy man does that too. So I just don't know.
It could just be that they lose hope.
I have no idea.
No idea. What's the average family size then? How big? How many children? About 5 per family usually, or?
Usually, I think average is about 3 or 4. About long time ago, but now average about 2 or 3. Getting less children than before when I grow up.
So back to the how they got married, and Darren, you were talking about the dowry system. So assuming this young man who didn't really drink so much, when they got married, you said they get a dowry. Can you tell us about the dowry system?
Yeah, dowry system is obviously when you want to marry, well, in my knowing, when you want to marry a Khmer, you would have to then the family would tell you again how much they want the dowry, because one thing that I've would know is the woman seems to bring in the money. It seems to be that when they lose the daughter, they're losing money. So it's almost you're compensating the family and what they would have had. So because what I saw is a woman, is the girls worked very, very hard on the rice fields. So what I saw was you were really paying compensation is what they're losing. They felt the family was losing. And also for others, it was showing also social structure, showing again your muscles about money, of how important you are. And again, if you have a lot of money, it shows that you've married well into wealth. And one thing I've learnt, my wife even said, usually you marry your own kind, which is quite, he says you don't get this fairy tale story where if you're poor you marry a rich man. Normally it's rich and rich. So dowry is almost important, showing that you can sort of, you're in the same social structure. So if someone's middle class, then that man's got to produce his middle class. Otherwise he's not getting a look in. There's been many cases where even I know of Khmer girls and boys where family have said no, you're not marrying because of economic. Money is very important. It's not about love. It's getting better, but it's very much like they're from a poor family, we're rich. It's not going to happen. And families have said no. And obviously as the mum and dad blessing is very important, then and obviously the child, so we can't marry. And I've seen that on many occasions where I know even some friends actually who've been girls who've met someone, fell in love, they've been rich, but the family said no, she's too poor, and it's been over.
So the men have to bring money to the bride's family.
Yes, got a bride's family, yes.
And these, as we said, these young men obviously can't be alcoholic because then they can't afford a dowry.
Then he wouldn't be getting married.
And you wouldn't be getting married.
So it's generally the man, obviously he's only getting what he's the worth in his pocket in some way, in some occasions. So if he's rich, he can buy who he wants. If he's in a poor structure, then he's not going to be able to be in a rich family.
Okay. So
another thing, the mum of the man could pay first.
It's the man's mother who pays. She has to get the money. What happened to his dad?
No, not the dad. The family. The family of the man have to pay.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. The family of the man have to pay the dowry.
Yeah.
Right. So he now came into this marriage showing that he can afford to have a wife.
Yeah.
In the village, do they usually, does the man have a rice field that his wife now is going to join him working on, or?
Depend what the family, rich or poor.
Right.
Some family, they have nothing, okay, let work by bare hand or do the fishing, do the work, the labor, the right field for the family who have the right field already.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then they start having children, and perhaps he loses hope or gets depressed because life is not really working out very happy. They don't have enough to eat all the time. And then the children, as they're born, therefore, are not taken to school. The schools, do you have to pay for education for every level?
No, you don't have to pay for school.
But then they keep the children from going to school so that they can be part of making more money for the family.
In Cambodia at the moment, they do only, in the village, they do only half day of school. Like they start school at 7 o'clock, they finish at 11 o'clock, and they go home. They can like do the rice field or they help the family around with it.
Okay.
But in Phnom Penh they have full time, but in they have to pay for the private school.
Right, of course.
The public school of Khmer only, you free.
Okay. So we have a scenario, village scenario where the man's drinking, the woman's working in the rice fields, and I think you'd mentioned earlier, Dallas, that the girls tend to be more useful in the rice fields than the boys. So the girls are valued as, I think Darren also mentioned, as the workers of the family. So is there a culture in which boys are really allowed to be lazy?
Yes, kind of culture too. The boy allowed to be lazy. And
which maybe then once they grow up, we then continue with they get married, and once life gets too hard, then they get to drinking because they were never taught to deal with life that was too hard. They just were allowed to be lazy anyway. Is this...
or another thing I can say, like the men, they do the job like quickly already, and they can do it quick, and then they can be lazy, but the woman have to work long hour than a man.
Why is this? I don't understand.
Because the man who you can say, like the man, the mother say, I need a wood to make a fire, so the man maybe can just do for 1 hour. He go to get the wood and come home straight away, and the last hour he can do whatever he want. But the woman have to go to get money.
The woman has to get?
To go to the rice field and get money.
But the man doesn't have to go to the rice field to get money, or...
They can, but generally the man allow a bit more than a woman. The woman...
So strange, because the men are stronger, right? I mean, why don't the men do more of the work since they are actually physically more capable?
I don't think they have what they call patience to do that.
So it might be the kind of work that's available?
Yes.
So there might be a need to bring in a kind of work that exploits the strength of the men for a longer period. That's a very interesting point. So we were talking again about the poor families, and then the case of being able to bring in money with the girls. So we've got the dowry system, but there's also the human trafficking system, isn't there? And is there a lot of trafficking of boys, would you say, in Cambodia?
It can be, and I think if the trafficking could be abroad.
Right.
Could be go to abroad, like go to work in Thailand.
Yes, I have a news report here that says much of the trafficking out of Cambodia and Laos ends up in Thailand. This is their overseas destination.
Yeah, and they call, I think could be, for the Jam people, they could go to they call Malaysia. Malaysia is a lot of Muslim there, so they go there.
The boys?
Yes, the boy I call the Muslim culture. They go to Malaysia or another way I can't remember.
Do you know what kind of work they traffic to do in places like Malaysia?
I have no idea. Because never talk about it with them, because we're not kind of close, because Jam people and Khmer people is different.
Of course.
Yes.
But the Khmer people are selling. Now, talking about the trafficking, do they come in and kidnap? Do they just...
No.
No. How does this work?
They just tell people if you go to work with them, you can get more money and send home.
So they tell the parents that?
Yes.
Instead of having them work in the rice field or picking up wood, let them come with us and they can make more money. About
more money.
How old do they allow this? What's the youngest?
The youngest, I think, is about 15.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
For the man go to work
okay.
in the country.
Okay. And the issues with the women as well?
Yes.
Is there a lot more, perhaps, of the women being trafficked?
The woman, I think it... Not I think it definitely go work like the maid in the house for like in other country like Malaysia. If I have a daughter, if I want to send a daughter, definitely have to work in the house like a maid. And some cases you never see them again because they die in the other country.
And again, this is the parents, right, who make the decision, not
Yes.
not the children.
Not the children.
And then they get paid.
They get paid, they think they're gonna get paid, but in the end they don't get paid.
Wow.
Because how can you contact, because you don't know anybody there. And
don't they have a pay system?
No.
Before they take the child away? No. Interesting.
Because in some cases, my village, one girl go to work in Malaysia, like a maid in somebody's houses in Malaysia. She come back, she can't get mental problem. Like she become become crazy, become angry, start to hurting people. Yeah, in some cases.
Wow.
In some cases, she never come back.
Wow.
And I see one girl, she never come back. She died, and in the end, she died completely because, yeah.
Wow. Did parents they didn't get any money, or they got some, or you don't know?
Don't.
We have I grew up in Nigeria, and we had a very similar thing where there were these agents who would go to the neighboring country. They would go to Benin Republic, Lome. They would go to Togo, and they would do deals with these families who couldn't afford to feed all the mouths of the children they had, and they brought these youngsters, really anything from 9-10 years old to 16 years old. And they bring them to Nigeria, where there was a rising middle class who could afford to employ these children as help in the house, as servants. And so they would live in the house as servants, and the agents would pick up their salary every month, presumably to keep a portion as a percentage for themselves, and give the rest to the servant's family. And that was the deal.
It's similar. It's similar, but some case is not. Some case is gone forever. Some case is yes. Some case is like the money come every month. The people who have it got percentage. But I think that the most good country it bring good money to is Korean. If you study, you pass the Korean exam, you go to work in Korean, then you can get a good job and send money back home. That's Korean.
Are we still talking about where the family does a deal with the agency?
Yes.
So how do you get a Korean exam in the village?
You have to come to Phnom Penh and study it.
Is there a particular school, and what is it to study Korean language, or
yes,
just the language?
just the language.
I see. And then do they apply online, or do they get an agent? Or?
They have an agent, but the good agent.
I see.
Agency good.
But by this time, this child is not a child anymore, surely.
They're not a child anymore.
So it's not the same system. We're talking about where the parents are making the money off of the children. But this what you're talking about is not that. The good job is not where the parents are making money. Is it? Well, the child by this time would be over 16, I would think.
Yes, have an ID card before they go.
Indeed. Yes. So this is a different thing altogether.
I understand.
So wow. Is there have you known of also any of these girls being sold off to sex trafficking, particularly?
No.
You wouldn't know anything about that. And I'm going to now ask Darren, who has been as a foreigner in Cambodia, would you know if the sex trafficking trade has underage girls?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I actually met a tuk-tuk driver. It's very common, but I met a tuk-tuk driver, and kind of was like a little journalist actually, wanted to know more, and he actually was a guy who would actually bring people over from another country. And I even asked him, I said, and he's got 2 children, I actually remember, and he said, we can get any age, and he'd even say at one point, girl with no hair, and obviously you don't have to know what that, you'd obviously know what that is. And then when I said to him, I said, you have how does this work? And I came from not a judgmental, someone to know more answer, so I just said, how does that work with you having 2 children? And he had 2 younger children. He said, no, that's okay, they all come from Vietnam. They're Vietnamese children, and actually Khmers don't mind Vietnamese. We won't do it to our own children. That's what they were saying, Khmer, no, not good. Which I don't believe, I think that still happens a lot. But he did say, it's justifiable, I can do it because of Vietnamese and we don't care about the Vietnamese. So from that, there was underage sex. I would say there's trafficking because you would get, you got massage parlours, which is another thing as well in Cambodia, which can be like $2 or $3 you pay, very cheap. But these girls are actually here to pay off. Very much similar to England, they'll bring girls from Vietnam or some places and they'll take their passport and just say, you need to pay off this money to get your passport back. And then obviously they're in the thick of things and they don't get their passport back. So yeah, so I'd never met people who've been trafficking, but yet obviously I knew about the underage sex and they actually with bodyguards every year.
So the Vietnamese children, I'm wondering, I don't know if you have any insight, if they were kidnapped or sold by their own family.
I wouldn't know, I'll be honest. I would have no recognition. I have no idea if they're sold, or I wouldn't know how they come in. I'll be honest, you didn't say anything, tell me.
They're working to pay off and get their passports, presumably.
Or he might be the Vietnam people live in Cambodia.
You got a lot of Vietnamese.
Not necessarily that they cross the border.
No.
There's a lot of Vietnamese there anyway, so...
Normally they live on the river a lot, the Vietnamese people. They don't live on the land, so it could be that kind of that Vietnam, not the Vietnam from Vietnamese. The Vietnam who already in Cambodia land. Yes.
And as he was telling me as well, and other Westerners, what I know, I don't know it by first hand, but by hearing, they were saying, like we talked about the village, they were saying sometimes the mothers will be in debt. And that would be the only way, or they'll be in debt, or maybe they've had another child and they can only feed 3 and there's a 4th child and they're like, what's the lesser evil? What do I do? I've got 3 children to feed, but if I could send 1 child away, kind of they're knowing what they're doing, at least I'm finding 3. So sometimes that's what happens a lot. And I've even seen documentaries, that's been the case, where the mum said, I'm sorry, I've got 3 other children and you can help us. Almost, so that child almost goes through that, I'm helping, but obviously she's gone through her own trauma and gets very angry, and so that's the case. I've heard paying off a debt. They pay off a debt and they think the debt will be paid off, but obviously it's not. They get lost obviously in trafficking and things. So but yeah, it is rampant there. When I saw that tuk-tuk, and if you go to Cambodia and just get to know tuk-tuks, they'll get you anything from whatever age.
Wow.
And it's that easy, relatively easy.
I want to move a scale up now to the nightlife and the social structure that's acceptable in the nightlife. We've seen there's a different standard for boys and girls growing up in the village, and it would seem there's also a different standard for men and women in their sexual conduct in society. Again, in Nigeria, men are not promiscuous, they're just men. Women who sleep around are promiscuous. Men who sleep around are not promiscuous, they're just men. Is this the way it is in Cambodia as well?
Yes.
And how does that play out for girls growing up in society? For men to be just men, they need the girls to agree, right? I mean, we're looking at maybe girls from 17 upwards, 18 upwards. How do they see their sexual status? Do they see themselves as able to get what they want if they can please these men? Or how does this work socially? Let me ask, in Nigeria again, I go back to that, in university, many girls who wanted to live live large, who wanted to have expensive things and look super cool, would have a sugar daddy, or they would have a superboy. And that meant that you had somebody who paid for your expensive Gucci handbag and made sure that you got your hair weave stuck on and looked super cool, and you lived above the level of most people on campus because you were dating, but it wasn't quite a date. It was for sex. It was a prostitution, and a girl could have 4 or 5 of these, and you had a whole schedule and everything like that, because men will be men, and you're meeting a need. How does this work for women in Cambodia? Do they see themselves like that, or?
I think very similar. Very similar.
I noticed that the women's attire for the traditional New Year really celebrates the curvy figure of a woman. Very tight fitting around the waist and showing the hips and the...
Not much anymore.
Okay,
Yeah,
so this is the tradition, as I said. It made me think that there's a thing for women to think, I'm here to please the man. Would you say it's like that? They feel we're here to please the man.
Yes, it can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
So how is it with the girlfriend stuff then? As I said, in Nigeria it was about sugar daddies and superboys or whatever. But Darren was telling me about the girlfriends who are only there, or they change every week. How does this work?
On different levels. I'll just give you one example. When I just came into Cambodia, and I was probably about 3-4 months, and I'm now working in the airport. So I'm working with Khmers, and they all introduced themselves as wives, and then they said, oh, also we have girlfriends. They started laughing, and they said girlfriend, and I just, at first it took me back hearing the word wife, then girlfriend, and then translator, or not translator, some other guy, I think he knew when my face went a bit funny, he whispered and said, no, not girlfriend, prostitute. He said they will just say girlfriend, but really prostitute or mistress. So on different levels they would have someone on the side, either one where it'd be like a concubine, where they would give them a house, almost like a second wife. They give them a house, so they look after, or it would be an ongoing thing, they just give them money. Again, depending on their status, depending where they are. If they're very rich, like our next door neighbour, we knew somebody. We do know someone who in the government, and again very rich. So obviously he's given her a house, given her a car, and he's married, and yet he has a child with her. So that's his sort of mistress. So it works on different levels, but you never really hear. That's one thing. It seems to be socially accepted, because you don't sort of hear the word prostitute or I don't know if there is a word prostitute for Cambodia. My Khmer is not good, but you don't hear this is a woman I pay money for. Very much when you see a girl at the side of a Khmer, they are very gracious. They wouldn't, and I don't want to stereotype, they wouldn't act. You wouldn't sort of take a prostitute. It's not a thing you do in England where you take a prostitute and say this is my, or you prostitute. You wouldn't even do that.
No. So
it's something was just strange that I had to realise, and then it was almost acceptable. It's almost like hey, one for the boys. Very much like this is a norm. Even when they said it, they laughed. It wasn't a shock. It wasn't like, oh, you're from England. They were just like, yeah, I've got a wife and I've got a girlfriend. So it was something similar. But again, and as I said before, talking to you, it seemed like even the Westerners then picked up that same thing. The Westerners came, and even when I lived there, because I was lucky enough to live there, and when I lived there, you'd see Westerners saying, oh, this is my girlfriend. And even I had to have Westerners whisper and say, prostitute. And it sounds terrible. We did actually have this wrong ongoing joke sometimes. Actually, we would say how it was when someone would come, this is my girlfriend, she'd go to the toilet and we're like, how much you pay her? And someone she'd say, no, it's not like that. And then we'd joke and say, okay, don't pay her and see if she comes. And they didn't like it. I must admit, it's one thing, the Westerners didn't like the word prostitute or sex worker. And obviously, who does? So it's very much acceptable because... And Westerners, again, it is very controversial. I'm no way accepting and saying this is a great thing, but Westerners seem to go to Southeast Asia for the sex trade because it's a girlfriend experience. It's not, as you would think, as in England, sorry to say, wham bang, thank you mate, it's over in 5 minutes. It's that experience. You'll go on holiday with them, and it's almost like the escort experience with a cheap price. And the girls generally are quite good girls, and long they haven't been in the business too long, they generally are looking for love, as you may talk later about the finance and them. It's something that they don't want to do, but it's something they're caught up in, and still there's some of them still, and you do hear success stories who are actually looking for love. For them it's a job. If they find someone they can love, they get married, and there are cases, very small percentage, where they do take the girl out the bar and it works. Again, and so this is why, again, I can see it, I can understand it. I won't say accept it, but I understand why Westerners would go to Cambodia and do it in Cambodia and Thailand rather than England, because you don't hear men even in England saying, oh, I went to the prostitute last night. That's something you don't want to do, something shameful, because you think of the drug, or you think of King's Cross, a quick dirty room. Or the only way you could justify it if it's like Pretty Woman and you spent thousands, which most people can't in England. But in Cambodia you can get that girlfriend experience. It feels normal. You use that jargon. You never say sex worker or prostitute. The only times you hear that is when an NGO comes to try to save it. You really, and you actually get some of the Westerners going, oh look, they're injured, or Christians, they call them, they're not sex workers, they're my girlfriend. So they're quite deluded too. There's this delusion. Take the money away and then see if they come. We always say that to my Western friends. If you not pay her, would she still be with you?
Right.
And if they say no, then we say, well, that's called a prostitute. So in that way, it's very dilute. It's very, and I think even the Khmer culture saving face. They wouldn't come out with you and say, that's my sex woman. It would be my girlfriend. So it almost covers over multiples of sin, really, by just saying it's my girlfriend. And she will, I'll be honest, most of them, unless they really are caught up in drugs, which I'm not really seeing, most of them, which are when I saw expats have their girlfriends, they would look and act as they were a girlfriend going out on the town. So you would never know. You know, but saying that, and I hate to judge most people, but if you go to Cambodia and you see that big man with a 21-year-old girl, you kind of put two and two together and think, this guy's a sugar daddy, he's rich, he's doing very well, because in normal society, forgive me, I'm not knocking it, but you're not, sometimes someone who's 70 and a 21-year-old girl, it's laughable.
That's a granddaughter.
Exactly. You can't sort of say that's love. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, viewers, but generally, you know, and all you got to do is go to Cambodia, because I was shocked when I first went there. Like, how are they together? And then people whispering me, well, that's his, you know. And so a lot of it is covered. Even when you go to the karaoke bars, that's another sort of thing for Khmers. It seems to be it's a playground. Like, if I said to my wife, I'm going to KTV, she'd say, no, I had a woman.
Yeah.
You wouldn't let Darren go to KTV?
Not really.
Why wouldn't you? I went to KTV when I was in China. Oh, should I say that?
Some were okay.
The work?
2/3.
The job took me there.
1/3.
They said it was a social for all of us, but it seems like this is a different experience.
If you go in the women group, yeah, I'm allowed, but not the men and men, no. Because if the men go, or the women,
They don't go as a mixed group when they want to be up to no good.
No.
Yeah, no.
They just go as men.
As men, yeah.
I see.
There is
That's
a
an
mix.
eye-opener.
They do, yeah. There is a mix. There is a KTV, family KTV,
Yeah.
and they've gone. We've seen it, and then other family members will just be like, oh, the boys are coming KTV. You want to come?
Yeah.
And when I say, you know, and you can tell the twinkle in their eye. And you know and you know also $200 or $300, and you know $200 or $300 will be dropped, which they can't afford. That's another thing. It will be dropped. They cannot afford it, but they'll live that. It's another thing about some Khmers. They'll just live like the last day. They live every day.
So this is money that would have been building their family.
Yes, and we've seen
paying
that.
bills.
I can say I probably, sorry to sort of talk bad about, actually it's not really our family, it's part of the family, but I probably know family members who really have got money they could have invested or could have saved, and that money has gone to a KTV. That has gone, so they are taking money. So, and then you see the wives suffering, but then the wives again saving face. They'll work hard, and work hard, and then they may get to a level again where they're doing well, and then the man spends and he spends. It's very, I'll be honest, I've not seen lavish women group going out and spending lots of money, but I've certainly been to groups where men who really don't have that sort of money start throwing money around.
Indeed.
It's like with me when I was in Cambodia, I only spent what I can afford.
Indeed.
And yet my wife, told me one day, which she said, "Oh, one of our uncles calling you tight. You never spend your money." Mm-hmm. However, we spent it. We only spend what we have. Mm-hmm. So, and now some of these people, which bless him, he had 2 or 3 houses, got nothing now, nothing, and he was doing so. That's another thing as well about Khmer men, or even Khmer sort of culture. Something they like to show off. There's that show off. Like, let's do now and think tomorrow. Think later. And that's where the bankruptcy, I think, comes to a lot of people. It's that saving face as well. If you've got a lot of money, you get anything. If I started throwing money around, doesn't matter how big I am, all of a sudden all the ladies would come around me, and that's it. For one night, I am, the next whatever. I am the king of the town.
Wow.
And then you come home.
King for a night.
Yeah, and then you come home and your family. There's a vicious circle. And you see that. You always see men drinking, and then there is that culture with women that it doesn't happen. You see that women, and now it's getting obviously it's changing because of the younger generation, but still of the generation, you can tell a Khmer woman who probably is in the game because of their dress, really, and their speak. Because some of them, again, they still generally, Khmer women are still very modest. You saw, as I said, their dress, they're still very modest. They're still very quiet. They're very, also as well, they've got this submissive thing when they go out. The man's always the loud one. I've seen that a lot. And they're always serving their husband. I've seen it when we have parties. Even though the men everyone's having a party, but it's the women who are serving the drinks. It's the women who are giving the food. If I ever got up and started doing, which I've done once, the men were like, "Oh, sit down, it's a girl's job."
It's the men.
That's what the women do. It's men. So the men will be all drunk, and when the men want to go, then the women follow. It's very rare the woman's going to say, "We're going now." So in that sort of way, saving face, the woman is very submissive, very submissive under her husband. So the husband is a king for the day, or king forever, really. Especially I never know what goes on behind the closed door, but in public, a good Khmer woman says nothing really. If that's that sort of right in a sort of way. Saves face. Maybe they argue at home, but no way would a woman say anything outside. If a woman is shouting at a man, then it'd be serious. I've seen that before, which is ugh. If a woman loses it, then it's serious. It's serious, and it's not stopping yet. It's like run. When a woman loses it, run, because it all comes out. I've seen that. You see it. You sometimes see, as I said, when sometimes, not always, when the woman and the other girl meet each other. Ooh. And it's terrible. It's run away. Someone's going to die, really. Oh, it's terrible because again, the corruption, it's all about money. You won't get police involved. The police are not going to be sympathetic. So at the end of the day, you take it in your own hands. And it's very brutal.
Even the police, they know the girl fight because of one of them stealing the husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't.
They know that's the reason girls are fighting.
Yeah.
Wow. So, speaking with Anne when we were in Cambodia, she talked about having mostly boys in her orphanage because the girls, if I remember correctly, make more money for the family, as we have already discussed as well. And the boys are lazier. But the families, when they can't feed all their mouths, would rather have the girls stay home and let the boys go to the orphanage. Maybe that's a good thing considering the kind of upbringing. But you're going to start an orphanage, and tell us about it. You think you're going to have boys as well, just the same? Or how do you envision? What are you planning?
Depend what the boy come, I take the boy. The girl come, I take the girl. It's not
going to be sexist.
Not gonna be.
So my question now moves to, how do you expect to receive children into the orphanage? Where will they be coming from? How will you get them?
Going to that question about where we get the orphanage, one, I'll be honest, when we go there, I think with Dallas, and she don't know, I think when we go there we'll know the need, and I think we want to be open for that. Obviously being Christian, we want to be open to God's Spirit as well, leading us. However, we also feel important, I said to Dallas today, when you asked this question before, about referrals, I think are good to be referred, because I think that will be a help, and there's a need, talking about the boys, but there's also a need where I spoke to another orphanage when we went there last year on a mission trip, and Anne has been saying that it seems that the boys, especially got a lot of boys there, but even boys or girls, we're not going to just be limited to boys or girls, but when they get to 18, at the moment they're all in school, but then when a lot of them now need university, it's at a point where otherwise the working sector is not that open to them, so when they seem to have a degree, it seems to be a bit open for them, the bank sector, certain sectors. So one thing Anne's saying is, obviously they're in where she is 2.5 hours Phnom Penh, there's no universities. So she's very concerned. After she's given them a foundation, she's told them, obviously what to do and good structure, and they've got a good family unit, but then what next? And that's what we feel. We've got a house in Phnom Penh, and we'd really like to offer that to people who are older, 18 plus, who really university. We want to say to them, you're coming for university, because that's the only thing at the moment we can give them. We can't give them any other, there's nothing other training we can give which we recognised for their work. We can't train them any trade. So I think at the moment what we'd like to use is their education, and also encourage them to go to university, because I think, as we all know, one good thing about university is it's an invitation of knowing what's out there, meeting people you'd never normally meet, really. That's what university can do. So that's one thing we'd probably like to offer, is start when we go back. We think going back within 3 years or so, when we do go back, then probably, in the meantime, talk to Anne and see where we can help. And then even in the house as well, as they're used to, one thing about Anne, they've given them structure. So they've had this good structure, and we feel, and I really do feel strongly, from 18 plus, if that structure's not, if they're not in that structure again, continuing, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous, and they're vulnerable because they're in a good community, good structure. Now, it's like anyone, if we're in a good upbringing, then we're told to get on our own, sink or swim. Some people do actually swim well. There are some people who've got that strength, but on the other negative side, some people fall quite badly at that age, because the adult world's open to them now. They can go to bars, they can ride bikes, they can do cars, they can drink and drive. So this is one thing we would like to do at the moment. When it comes to the orphanage, as orphanages change now, as we know, it's more single parents or low income families. It will be hard to know where they're coming from until we're over there. I think once we're over there and we know the community, we can then get referrals, and also with other organisations we want to work with. So that's, I think, realistic at the moment. We're thinking about that need, which I don't think is really our next door neighbour, and that's why I like it. They haven't got that model, but they're all students living there. It's very unique. They're actually middle class, but all the parents have bought a house and said stay there. And I just thought of that model straight away. I thought, yeah, wouldn't that be great if we can provide a house and you go to university. So that's what I think where we are with you when it comes to.
So you're thinking of setting up sort of scholarships, accommodation.
And that's a nice thing about it. University, I'll say it, if there's any donors, it's not expensive. That's a nice thing about it. Private schools in Cambodia are, when it comes to kindergarten up into high schools, can be quite expensive actually. But when it comes to university, you're looking at, in some parts, only $1,000 a year. So you're looking at £4,000 for a whole year, or even $3,000 for the whole degree, which is nothing. So yes, we would probably do a sponsorship. That's where we'd ask donors to sponsor some people.
This is great. And talking about offering opportunities to develop skills as opposed to academically. I'm taking fourth culture there, and I'm really looking to set up workshops that train an entrepreneurial design of furniture, things like fold-away beds, or I've taken photographs of designed. So it's my hope to set up something similar to what IKEA does, for the young men of the village to be occupied, those who don't want or who can't really grapple with study, and you would have the university end, which is really good. And back to the moral structure, it would seem there is a dire need to shape the thinking of men from boys to manhood. Otherwise, the suffering of the women will not stop. Whether from working so hard that they are the ones working while the men get drunk, or to prostituting themselves to the men as girlfriends, just because the men just want a good time and they're spending all the family money on this night with a girlfriend. You know, there is a need to create men who can lead society. So I'm really praying into that. I'm praying that, Darren, that you won't, you will have this vision and bring it, and the Lord will raise up many more people who can train the men in uprightness.
Well, I think, Funky, I remember you. Listen, for people who are watching, this is something that does need to be prayed into, because even myself and Funky, we obviously remember had this opportunity. We had someone in America we knew from Anne, this missionary, who was looking after these men, and she was discipling, but she said she needed a man. And this was quite sad, because obviously she asked us if we knew anyone. I actually got contact 4, 5, 6 churches, and they all said they're busy. And that was the debt, the bankruptcy of Cambodia at the moment. It seems like that, again, discipleship, especially for men, is lacking. And they're lacking also a good man. And pray also, because I remember Israel saying that there are some godly men there, but not being godly as they should be. Not showing that image of God which they need. They were speaking one thing and doing another. And they said it was, and Israel, who's over there right now as a missionary, just said there needs to be more godly men so people can see God in His righteousness, so they can follow. They don't have that in the moment, because in Cambodia it's play, and if you're rich you're doing well. So in that way, so if you're sort of a norm, and humility, it doesn't seem to be an Asian thing, humility, or even worldly thing, I think. So I think it just needs a lot of, if people are watching as well, and a lot of men to come over and to help into discipleship. I think that's where the harvest is. I think women, there are a lot of women who know the struggle, and who actually can come together and talk, and I think you've got a lot, even much more they need. There are a lot of women groups. When it comes to men who are causing the problem, vicious cycle, the men aren't being discipled. So even though the women have opportunities, but the men are still being men. And it sounds terrible. It sounds like the only way the women are doing well if they don't marry again. Where are the good men? And I think that is the issue. You can help the women, but if you're not helping the core of the problem, as you just said, it's going to be a vicious circle. So you kind of need a strong man or many men to go over there. And even this for the expat community, that's another issue. The expat community, you get a lot of people going to England, going to Asia, especially Cambodia, trying to find themselves or play, and then they get burnt. They play, no one can play a fire without getting burnt. A lot of them get burnt, they get broken hearts because they don't realise it's a game they're playing, or they play the game too much and get burnt out. So
they fall in love with the prostitute.
Well, they had that. I had one guy, which is sad, and this is one thing about Asian hard thing. Cambodia is a place where sin is on tap. It's on tap, and it's free. It's almost like a buffet, and no questions asked. And if you got like £20-30 in your pocket, you can still have a good time in Cambodia. And the sad thing is, like, I remember being there, and I remember meeting tourists saying how lucky I was living there for that reason. Oh wow, look where you are, you got the beach, you got this, you got the women, it must be amazing living here. And I'll be honest, because I'll be honest, I saw the culture, and I'm not going to lie, and dabbled when I first got there. But like anyone who lives there, and anyone who's got so-called parrot flesh on tap, eventually you get burnt. And the sad thing is, when you get depressed in a place you should be happy, there's nowhere to go.
Right.
And we saw 2 or 3 attempted suicides. One, sadly, he did lose his life.
These are expats?
Yeah, expats. One of them in our group, we got the 5 of us, and one passed away, one committed suicide, one's divorced now, and it's terrible because and even the guy laughed, like the guy who's living there so much. Once you live there so much, it sounds terrible, you kind of want the Khmer way, but you're not willing to pay for it, so you try and go the cheap way. And then you get almost very, very dark in Cambodia, where we don't even talk now, where actually you've got like, you've got the bar girls, but then you've got the other ones who are the street workers. They're not allowed in the bars because they've got a bad reputation. They've been in the game so long. And these are freelancers, which actually are probably the worst. They'll say for free, but then they'll take all your money, or they've been so tarnished in what they're doing, mental problems. You know, this guy would come home and be this guy before he passed, would be talking about his relationship, joking, oh yeah, this girl woke up and she had an axe over my head, she had a knife, she almost knifed me, and was almost giggling. But you can tell his giggling wasn't, he was almost fed up with the whole game, but he didn't want to pay for it. And as they say, there's nothing free in this world, especially when you're doing that kind of stuff. He wanted it free. So this expat who lived there for years,
was he not paying the girl?
No, he wasn't paying the girl. He'd go to freebies.
And so she was going to kill him?
Oh yeah, they'd kill him, they'd take their money, and he'd sort of laugh, but it's always...
Friend who, it seems he now wanted a girlfriend from his worker, and she was still working, and she wanted her pay, but he thought it was for love, and she didn't think so.
Well,
she was also mentally...
He didn't know what love was in the end. In the end, it came to a point, you didn't know what he wanted. I'll be honest with you, he'd laugh. He kind of knew the game, but he was getting tired and bored of it. But he wasn't willing... It sounds terrible to say it, but he wasn't willing to pay the price. So he got the price.
What is the price?
Well, he wouldn't pay, you know, whatever the bill was, he just wouldn't pay. So he would try to pick up the freebies, which
Indeed.
Everyone knows in Cambodia, you don't do that. If you go free, something's going to happen. Like one night, I remember my friend, you know, I'd call him, and again, when you're in Cambodia, it's hard, you've got no choice meeting certain expats, and these are some of my so-called friends, I wouldn't say really good friends, but learned a lot from them, so they'd be my colleagues at work really, so we'd go out. And it came to a point where he was fed up, he didn't know what he wanted, and I think it was too late, he left. And also what was quite sad, just on a side note, all of these people I remember quite clearly, it was Mother's Day, and I just said, oh, you're going to call your mum today? Just out of figure of speech, I thought everyone calls their mum Mother's Day, it's something you do. And it was ironic, all around the table, oh, I haven't called mum for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. And you saw the lack of roots. That's one thing, I'll be honest, it kept me grounded. I won't say I'm perfect, I'm not going to put my hand up and say I was perfect. But what kept me grounded is I had family. I had a community, again, using that community, that strength. And they would question me, even when I met Dallas, you know, when we met each other, I was very conscious of my friends and my family, what they thought of my wife. It's very important to me. And I took it very slowly. We met each other, we dated for 2 years. And one of the reasons I told my wife, I need to know you so people know what I love about you, so I can tell people back in England, because they're going to ask that question. They're going to say, how do you meet? I can't say, oh, I love her. And they'll say, love what? I don't know. They'd look at me and think you're crazy, come back to England. You know, she's after your money, which is totally not. When she met me, I just had a bicycle to my name, really. So totally, it's not the case. But that's what people think. It's about the money, or you do get that stereotype. So just going back, trying to round it off with what I'm talking about friends, they didn't have a community.
Right.
They never really had someone also that we would call each other out on things.
Indeed.
We didn't want it. They didn't want it. Most you go to Cambodia and you see that other side. It's just story after story. It becomes another scene in a movie, in a crazy movie. He'll come and, awfully to say it, even though you may be doing it, you're kind of living it through them. You're kind of laughing with them. You shouldn't be looking back, it's pretty bad, but you're laughing with them. Oh, who's that girl last night? What was she about? Oh yeah, she's a crazy girl.
To become joke.
Yeah, it became a joke, but deep down you can tell it's not because it's not a joke. And not like for these ones, I would say the girls knew what they were doing. I'm not saying I don't feel sorry for them, but they were in the game a long time. They knew what they were doing. They weren't so much victims as they call, but what they were sharing with the English people, they were they were being victimised. Obviously it's our own fault, stupid fault, but no, they didn't want accountability, they didn't want they didn't want to be changed until it was really too late. You know, we got one guy who did finally, he tried to commit suicide and failed, and luckily we brought him, he came back to England because we knew it'd die, otherwise he even said, I've lost any hope. You know, looked in the eye and he was empty, had nothing. So I think in Cambodia, looking at especially for, I think Cambodia really needs some strong men, really strong men. You know, and I think, and they need discipleship, and I think they need role models. I think that we all do. It's a role model. It's not just purely just being a man. It's how to be a man, sharing stories, and even sharing, being vulnerable, sharing. We're not perfect. We're not perfect, but sharing and having, and also as a Christian, showing that obviously in Christ. In Christ, obviously, there is gentleness, kindness, and he went through all the temptations but overcame them. And overcame them by having life, not death, because as I said, most people go to Cambodia playing around, it ends up normally in that way, death. It really does, or struggle, or they've been burnt out. It's never a happy story when Westerners try and play this game.
And I don't want to overlook the fact that there is a demonic spiritual dimension to all of this. I just heard the confession of a man who got involved in child pornography in his 50s on the internet, and he wanted to talk about it. And the interviewer said, how after 50 years of living did you get into this situation that you've been arrested and imprisoned for child porn? And he said, I don't know. He said, I was living alone. I'd just come back from abroad. He's a British man. And he said, I still had my sex drive. So I would go on the internet for porn. But the child porn flashed up. And the first time I saw it, I thought, that's just vile. But it would flash up again. And he said, there's a strange magnetism. It said it's magnetic. So many times I cleared my computer of the images, and I thought, that's it, because I have a child as well. And then he said, but I would go back because there is a strange magnetism. It's so weird. And I remember thinking, that's the devil. He's a seducer. And there is a seduction why men would leave England, leave the United States, come to Cambodia. There is a draw to what they think will be a wild and wonderful life that actually is full of poison. As Proverbs says, the way of seduction, inside that bed is the poison of snakes. It will kill. And so that is also the need for men who can break that spirit of seduction by just turning the light on the shadowiness that says, oh, it's all cool, you know, we're just having a laugh, and just call a spade and show it up for what it is.
And I also think as well, Funky, saying that I think what's people need to know, and that's what there's no success story as I've never seen someone successfully enjoying it. Yes, as a tourist maybe, and I'm saying that because it's a secret. It's something that they do, and I'm not again condoning it, but it's something they may do for a week and go back home. But when you live in Cambodia and you see, I've not seen a successful person safely saying after years, yeah, I still play the game, it's fun. Most of them, they are just hating the game, because as a person who lives there, you kind of know. You know, even with me, I'll still go into bars. I may have gone into bars with my friends, and you'll get the same sentence: "Hi, love you long time, love you short time. You come with me." And it's over and over and over. You get and if you've touched that before, you get frustrated. It's like the same movie. It's like probably watching EastEnders over and over and over and over. The first time could be good, the second, but after a while, you get sick.
It's sickening.
But then, when you're sick and you're dark, where do you turn to? That's the thing. I'll be honest. And when you hear, if you look on, you know, the news don't do it anymore, but if you looked on the news saw how many people died in Cambodia, a Westerner on his own. It happens every day. There's Westerners on their own dying in ditches because they've had this high, thought it'd be exciting. They've been exposed.
They went to paradise.
Yeah, went to paradise,
And it
then
was hell.
and when you think paradise is hell, if there's no more,
No hope.
then you go. That's what that guy said. That guy was like, I'm in paradise, and if paradise turns into hell, oh, where do you turn to? So if there's no epiphany of the true heaven, you then go, I've done it. You know, I'm meant to be happy. All these Westerners are coming. It's almost like the pilgrimage. Sorry to say it. You got the holy pilgrimage, where if you go to these holy places, you feel that you want to feel something. But so if you're now coming to this sex tourism, yes, you're going to feel something. Sorry, as a man in flesh. But then after a while, when you don't, you kind of go, oh my goodness, what is life there for? There's nothing, because that's the flesh. That's the flesh. And all of a sudden now you've got to either kill the flesh, and literally kind of metaphorically that's what they'll do. They will kill the flesh to get rid of this darkness, because the guy we met before he committed suicide, probably the couple of weeks beforehand, was just was in torment. You know, we wanted a girlfriend, we didn't know how to, but and then he tarnished every girl, but then that was his fault. It was a vicious circle. Indeed. You know, all girls are after your own money, and you're like, well, look where you've been. But then you don't want to say that to him, because you don't want to kick the guy down, because if there's no hope in someone and they don't want any hope, you don't want to kick them further.
No.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
You know, when you see, even as a friend once, I saw the lack of hope in his eyes. And it's Neil, and I said when I met this guy called Neil, when I met him, I knew him. The last night we spoke, just before and I came home and I said, honey, he's going to do something silly. I just sense it. And the next day we got a phone call. He's in Austria. He jumped off a building.
Jesus.
You know, and luckily it's lucky something saved him. But yeah, but he planned it. He had his passport in his back pocket. He planned it because he wanted to be found. Obviously, he didn't want to be left alone. And eventually they took him and left. We had another friend who came to Cambodia. He got lost. It's not a place to go. It's one in place. I would say stay away. You know, stay away. Even tell the mothers, if their mothers are saying their sons and want to go to Thailand and Cambodia, if their head's not screwed on, do not let them go. And I mean that. It's a dangerous place, because a lot of people say, I come to Asia to find myself. Most of Asia, what it does, like what COVID has done, it highlights your weakness and it intensifies it. You can play around with it, and eventually it will kill you. It will. It will kill you, because it's unlimited. It's unlimited.
Wow. Thank you.